But when I finally told my mom, it's like I wasn't putting my fingers down my throat to throw up. It's like you're eating to the point that you're like so full and sick. I could just literally make myself throw up without having to put my fingers down my throat.
Hi, team. Welcome back to another episode of The Wellness Effect. I am joined by the one, the only Miss Jensen Burns. And as she's doing the queen wave, because she is a queen since day one, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today, is Jensen's going to share her story because it's been a minute and it's a good one. And we always love sharing our stories and where we came from with all you guys, because I think it helps you relate to us and take us down from that pedestal you might have us on and just understand that we're just like everyone else and we're really nothing special. But yeah, so Jeb, well, first, how you doing? How you doing? Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me because I'm muted. So that's going to be a problem for an interview.
One thing about Jensen is she's a silly goose.
Yeah, I'm good. Yesterday we did our open office hours and we were talking about how we need to not put a million things on our plate. And last summer, I feel like I did exactly that. I had no plans basically the whole summer. And this summer we'll be going on 3 trips in basically June alone. So it's been a busy June, but I feel like I'm really leaning into it. In previous me, I was away from home for 3 weeks. Previous me would have been like, I'm going to lose my shit, but I actually feel like I was pretty okay with it. So I'm proud of myself in that aspect, but July will be a little bit more relaxed, which I'm also looking forward to. So
yeah,
I'm good. Just settling in Kamloops. Quick story. Lacey knows because she's on my close friends list, but I got attacked by a deer.
Oh my God. I even had to ask Zach, I'm like, that's not normal. Like, has that ever happened to you with a deer? And he's like, no. And I'm like, anyways, tell the story.
Are crazy here. So there's always just like deer where we live. I was going to tell everyone exactly where we live, but maybe I won't do that. Where we live in Kamloops, there are like a bunch of deer, and like every time you go there, you just see deer. Like they've kind of made it their own home. And I'm like, oh, they're so cute. Actually, yesterday we saw a mom and its baby, like literally the tiny, like must have been born honestly like a week ago. It was the cutest thing, but I'm like, that's probably the scariest one. So not too long ago, it was before we moved here. I was like walking around and I had Stevie, and I don't know like if they think Stevie doesn't bark at them, doesn't even know they're there, like does not care about them at all. And I'm walking with her and one starts like, this was before, like kind of like approaching me and like kind of like trotting slowly towards me. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so I like start walking the other way because they freak me out. They're like cute from far when they don't care about you, but not when they're approaching you. And I'm like, okay, going the other way. It keeps kind of like following me. I keep walking away and I'm like, oh my God, this is freaky, but nothing really happened with that one. A couple days ago, I'm going for a walk and I'm like turning a corner and this deer kind of like quickly like stands up and I'm like, fuck. So I like turn around and I like start walking the other way. It starts running at me, like full blown running. And I'm like, oh my God. So I start running and I'm running with Stevie. And there's like, it's by a bus stop. So there's a bunch of people at the bus stop and I'm like running. I'm like, hey, if I'm running away, it knows I'm not a threat. It will stop chasing me, continues to chase me. And then I'm screaming, like running with Stevie. I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, ah! And it kept following me for a while. And then finally I'm like sprinting at this point and I turn around, it finally stopped and like walked away. It was so scary. I kept saying to Matt, like, what would happen if it got to me?
I'm like, is it going to attack you or is it just like so curious? It just seems so weird because deers aren't like that sort of predator where they would like want to like stalk Stevie down so they could like it just seems so weird.
And it doesn't happen when I'm with Matt. It only has happened when it's just me and Stevie, when they start like approaching me. And I'm like, oh my God. But so yeah, I'm safe. But every time I'm on a walk now, I'm like, and yesterday, like Stevie was off leash running around a field and I'm like so scared. And then we like turn a corner and there's the mom and the baby. And I'm like, Stevie. now, because I think they're going to attack her. And luckily they're fine. But it seems like when Matt's there, it's no problem, of course. And he's going to just think I'm over exaggerating it. But I know when
Sounds
you
like
and
you're
Kira
making
both
this up.
replied. Yeah. When you and Kira both replied and we're like, oh my God, that's freaky. I'm like, see, Matt, these people have been around deers and they also think it's weird. Like, this isn't normal behavior.
No, it's not. But I feel like they must just be so used to humans and they're just like, yeah, it honestly it doesn't make sense. So I didn't have an explanation for it. It was
Running
so
after
funny.
me. Like, Matt was like, no, it was just fast walking. No, Matt, it was running towards me full blown. I'm
So
screaming.
I can't even picture it. It's so funny.
Like screaming at the top of my lungs. But I don't know, part of me next time I wouldn't, because I'm too much of a scaredy cat. Like if I just stood there, would it just like come up and like sniff us, or would it like go like with its front paws?
Push you over, like stand up on your chest. Just like
Seriously.
so funny.
I'm like,
So Jensen, were you always a deer whisperer?
you know what? From my young age, good transition. No, I was not always a deer whisperer. For all of you who want to know, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. Or actually, I didn't. I was born in Calgary, and there's not a lot of deers in the neighborhoods in Calgary. And then I moved and I grew up in Edmonton, and that's where I met Lacey, who actually had a huge part in my health journey, and we'll get to that as well. But how long have we known each other, Lacey?
That would have been like 2016 or 2017 was like kind of when I moved to Edmonton, started working with Jensen's ex, spotted Jensen from afar and got my prey. And no, but pretty much that's how it happened. And I like loved telling that story so much. I was just a brand new online coach and Jensen had like a crazy body. And I was like, I want to coach her in her first bikini. And I was kind of knew her boyfriend at the time. And so I was like, want to do a show? I'll coach you for free. You can use my suit for free. And then pretty much from that, she started working with me on the business, more doing like behind the scenes stuff, and then put her into the coaching role and she never left. Thank fucking
like,
God.
actually. It's so funny. My dad always is like, when I first started doing it, and I'd be like doing my check-ins because I was, gosh, like I would have been, when I started working with you, maybe
like 20 or 21.
Yeah,
maybe.
like even maybe 19, like super young. And then my dad would always be like, let's go for a hike or let's go. I'm like, Dad, this is my job. And like at the time, he's like, okay, whatever you say. And here we are, freaking 7 years later.
7 years later.
Still doing my job. So we'll get to that part of the story. But yeah, I think it's important for everyone. I think there's a lot of like new listeners here, which is great. And we want people to get to know us and why we're doing what we do and why we love what we do so much. And very few people, I think, are in this space because they just love being healthy and they're just great at being healthy and making good decisions. It's usually because they are coming from a place where they have had to heal a symptom or have learned that living a certain way does not make them happy. And I think that's all the case for basically everyone probably in this space. So I'm excited to kind of get into everything, but where do you think, like, where should I start, Lacey?
Well, tell us a little bit about you as a child. Do you have any siblings? Were you more like a slightly type A child? Were you moody? What was going on in little Jeb's brain?
I actually love talking about this. So I was definitely more of like a type A. I feel like it was a little bit of glass child syndrome in my family, especially as we got older, just because my brother struggled with some things. And like, I think he'd be totally fine with me sharing this, but like his mental health and more of that focus got put on my brother, which is fine. But of course, when you are that child, you just really learn how to like survive on your own, and you put like, I don't even know if it's pressure on yourself. And I also think this is another self-realization I've actually had recently. When you grow up like that, you have such high expectations of other people to operate at a certain level. And I'm noticing I have this in my relationship because you have been able to do that on your own. And so you just expect everyone to be operating at that same level as you are, even if maybe there are times that you're not. And so I think that is something that has like shown up in my life. I also think there wasn't a whole lot of stability in my home life. I never want to say that I had a bad home life. My parents loved me very, very dearly, but I just think they were doing the best they had with their childhood. And once again, just kind of had more of this like hands-off approach to parenting, which I think sometimes can work really well and other times not so much. So I was definitely like very self-reliant. And I think where a lot of my initial health things started showing up is that comes in the form of wanting a lot of control wherever you can in a lot of areas. So
this episode of The Wellness Effect is brought to you by Lifestyle You. If you're listening to this podcast and thinking, okay, this sounds like me, whether it's low energy, hormone imbalances, stubborn symptoms, or you just feel like you've tried everything, Lifestyle You is our root cause coaching program designed to help you actually connect the dots. We use functional nutrition, personalized support, and functional lab testing to figure out why your body is doing what it's doing, instead of just guessing or slapping a Band-Aid on symptoms.
And because you're a listener of The Wellness Effect, when you use the code Wellness Effect, you'll receive a free functional lab when you join the program. If this episode is resonating with you, make sure to share it with a friend, subscribe to the podcast, and check out the show notes to learn more about Lifestyle You and how to apply. Before I get into that, I also always loved sports. Like from the time I can remember, I always wanted to be like involved in like health in some way, shape, or form. Once I stopped wanting to be like a cowgirl when I was little, it was always like wanting to be a doctor or something along those lines. And I played soccer. I loved playing sports. I played volleyball. It was just, I feel like it becomes your identity. And I'm sure you can kind of relate, Lacey, where it's like you're the person that's like athletic and like loves eating healthy and doing all those things. And I've just like been that person since I was young. But I think when you're young and a lot of people, you're just doing it the wrong way at the beginning. And so that also impacted my relationship with health and exercise as I got older with some of the other things that I was dealing with. But like I was getting at before, and I know I'm going on some tangents, is the control aspect of things. I've made comments before how I dealt with an eating disorder. And I feel like I've told this story so many times, but I have to remember not everyone on this that's listening to this podcast have heard it. And so I hope that people get something from it. If you've heard me tell it a million times, I'm sorry you have to hear it again, but I feel like it's just something I've talked about so much. I don't have this like emotional attachment to it, but I think part of the reason was that control. I also am a very tall girl. I've been like the same height I am now, which is 5'9", since I was in grade 8. So when you are a tall girl, you are comparing yourselves to like little petite other girls. And it starts as young as that. And so I think, and I've heard other people say this, when you are that like taller, not super skinny, like girl, you are trying to like shrink yourself in other ways because you can't shrink your height. Right. And so I always was like looking at my body, looking at other people's bodies as like young as I can possibly remember. And so I think when you have this like obsession with like health and movement, exercise, but you also are trying to be smaller, it can kind of cascade into, and then you have these control issues. It cascades into a lot of the times eating disorders or OCD or whatever that might be. And that was the case for me. So I started with like binge eating like it does for so many. I remember like as so many women do, like restricting my calories at such a young age, like not bringing lunch to school because that meant I like wasn't going to be able to eat, and then having just a little packet of oats for breakfast. And I remember people being like, you should have like 500 calories in your breakfast. And that scared the shit out of me. And so it started from such a young age. And as I've talked about so much now, I do think it was a control issue. I think that restriction, though, resulted in the binging, which came because of that restriction that I was like subjecting myself to at such a young age. And so then I started binge eating. And then with that came binging and purging. And so for those of you that don't know what that is, trigger warning, like eating, like binging, overeating, and then like throwing up after you eat. And so that's where like the control thing definitely comes into play. And I struggled with that for so long, like years and years and years. And that's one of those things I like think back to my younger self and I just wish I could like give her a hug because it's such like an interesting thing when you're dealing with that when you're young and no one talks about that. You're like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I don't know. Like, I didn't think I had an eating disorder. I didn't think like something I obviously was ashamed about because it's not like you're like telling people, but you're like, this is kind of weird that I'm doing this. And then you like get older and you're like, okay, this is
I
not
know
good.
what I was thinking, and you might not be able to remember, but do you kind of remember when it went from binging and purging, or like even where you got the idea of like, oh, I could just throw up? Or was it more just like, oh my, it's probably like the shame that's like, oh, well, to solve this problem of all this calorie, I could just throw it up.
Yeah, I think that that's for sure where that's where it came from. I don't know, like, I don't think
Right?
I
Like,
like
did you hear
watched a
about it? It's
movie or
no,
something.
yeah.
And once again, this like might be like we're getting into the weeds, but something that was like, and I'll get to this, but when I finally told my mom, I wasn't like putting my fingers down my throat to throw up. It's like you're eating to the point of like, and sometimes it wouldn't
Oh,
be this point, but like to the point that you're like so full and sick, I could just literally make myself throw up without having to put my fingers down my throat, which is
wow.
bizarre.
I don't think I ever, yeah, I didn't know that, I don't think.
Yeah. So, and that was the other thing is I was like, well, I'm just doing it. It's not like I'm putting my fingers down my throat to do it. And so I think that like caused a weird relationship with it in a way. So that happened for years. I tell this story. I remember I was like in high school and we were like at a party at a freaking hall and I was drunk and I was like with my friend and I remember she was like I was throwing up because I was like sick. But she was like, "You don't eat enough." And then that's when I like told her and I'm not friends with her anymore, but she was like my best friend through junior high and like into high school and that's when I told her I was drunk and I was like told her what was like happening and the next day and I like to this day appreciate her so much because I think I needed like that was probably me like needing to tell someone because I was like so unhappy and unhealthy and sick and didn't know what to do and didn't know like had that shame at that point because I like started recognizing like this was bad and she texted me the next day and like told me she was there for me blah 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 and so I think that was like the moment when I'm like okay this isn't just like a secret that I can like deal with without any of my friends knowing, without anyone acknowledging it. And I need to acknowledge it myself. And I would Google like how to stop binge eating, how to stop yourself from throwing up. And it's all like, oh, distract yourself and read a book
Go for a
instead,
walk.
go for a walk. And I'm like, okay. And none of it ever, like at one point, I remember I read like ADHD meds and like Vyvanse. And I do think there is like a huge correlation between this kind of like person and also like ADHD and also probably this kind of person eats a certain way and that causes issues with focus but I was like okay well maybe I don't know do I need like a medication but I didn't want to do that and so finally I like told my mom long story short and then we went to the doctor and then the doctor referred me to like the psych nurse and then that didn't really do anything but I was like telling them that I don't put my finger down my throat and I wasn't honest like I'm like in high school right and I'm like not fully telling them to the extent of it or anything like that and then that didn't really do anything but all of these things I think were beneficial in the sense that I was like acknowledging that it was a problem and I had to fix it and then I remember like my TSN turning point if you will was I was once again really into the gym at this point I had stopped playing soccer and I was like going to the gym and watching a lot of like YouTube vlogger gym girls and there was one girl and she was like saying like oh I used to like binge and purge. But the main thing that helped me was that I just started eating more and I had like protein pancakes for breakfast and I had a lunch and I had all of these things. And that was like the main thing that registered with me. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to try that. So then I started tracking macros and I like set my macros. The number scared the shit out of me. I took off like 400 calories. And even that, I'm like, wow, like I actually feel satisfied at the end of the day. Like, this is crazy. And then that just kind of like transpired into tracking macros and slowly like eating more food and blah, blah, blah. But it was definitely like a long journey. And I think I've said this to Lacey before. There's this like in between, and it doesn't need to be like this, where it was like I was just hadn't figured out the binging part of it yet, but I was like stopping myself. I would not let myself like purge essentially. And so then you're like gaining weight, and it's just this like I'd stop playing soccer. And so it's just this like crazy cycle my like body and brain were going through for so long. And it was just, yeah, so hard on my body. Like I can't even begin to imagine how I was feeling. And that shows up in like, I had such a hard time focusing in school. I was like a good student because I'm like type A, but I just think back, I'm like, if I had like actual balanced meals, how much different my like education would have been, like night and day. And that's why even with the kids episode you guys just did, I think that's one of the most valuable things you can like do for your children, just in terms of like them being able to focus in school, is give them balanced meals and movement that isn't crazy. So that's kind of like the binge eating story of things and where it started.
And it's just even wild now knowing like everything else that you've gone through on your journey, how much of it was because of that and like
Yeah.
what that ended up leading to. And so it's like even more important for parents that it's like you need to prioritize that, because it's like, yeah, Jensen gained some weight and it was hard on her body and everything like that. But then that led to PCOS, PMOS,
Yes.
acne, etc.
All of the things. Yeah. And that's like people are like, well, it's a metabolic. And I've even like had this talk with myself before. It's like PCOS, PMOS is this like metabolic disorder. And you're like, well, I eat healthy, but it's like, okay, I have ate healthy, but my body was going through this like crazy insulin, blood sugar roller coaster for so much of my like adolescence that are such important parts of your life. And I was overtraining and I was so stressed out. And like that for sure is what led me
Mm-hmm.
to this point. And then I'm on birth control and I'm not taking my birth control consistently. Like just such a shit show. And so I'm like, it's good because it's like, okay, there's a reason why this happened, but now I know I can get myself out of it. But it's sad because I think a lot of people don't, like, I think if I never watched that YouTube video, like how long would that have gone on for? Like, when would that have registered? If I didn't watch YouTube videos at all or wasn't into that, like that probably still would be the path that I'm on, or
Yeah.
like hadn't been able to figure out. So, but no, I know it's crazy. And for those of you that don't know, like when we talk about like that metabolic health, like skipping meals all day and then binging at night. And for mine, like my binging was definitely extreme, but even just like those really high calorie meals that you save for like the end of the day and you go right into bed after that, like those things do impact your metabolic health, right? And just eating a salad every day isn't making you metabolically healthy, and training like crazy isn't making you metabolically healthy. You have to be very intentional with it. And I think because women have these like body image issues, that's part of the reason why, and we're just more sensitive. That's why so many women have these like autoimmune issues and metabolic health issues, because we're just told we need to like, once again, eat less, move more, and that's how you'll be smaller. And that is not sustainable. And you either sustain that and then you're extremely underweight or whatever it might be and under muscled, or you end up binging and you're in that binge and restrict. And so I think it's just fortunately something that men don't have to deal with. And that's something I always say, is that I think men can actually like, and it's definitely a case for me, they can really like heal your relationship with food, because they just like look at food as something that you eat, and they just, because probably like the relationship and how men are portrayed in media, blah, 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 they just listen to their intuition. It's like, okay, I need meat and potatoes and a fat source, and I'm going to eat all my meal until I'm full, and then I'm going to stop. Whereas women, it's like, I'm going to order the lowest calorie option. I'm going to only let myself eat as much as I can because my hunger isn't high, and I'm going to have coffee all day long so that my appetite is suppressed. But then once you see your partner like eating this food and they're encouraging you to eat more, and that was like such a big part when I talk about my macros. The partner Lacey was talking about earlier, like gym person, and that was a huge factor. Like him being like, that is not enough food to sustain like working 2 jobs, going to school, going to the gym, like eat more food. And of course I'm like, oh, okay. And that was the only thing that like made a difference. And that's another interesting topic too, is that like there's no one size fits all. I think if you talk to like a psychologist that works with people with disordered eating, they probably wouldn't necessarily agree with this, but I think tracking macros was one of the like number one things that got me out of this, is because I was able to see how much food I can eat and how good I feel from that amount of food, and how I wake up not feeling bloated all of a sudden, but I'm eating like 600 more calories throughout the day, and like you can eat more variety of foods, and all of these different things set me up so that now I just eat like that intuitively. But if I wasn't like given a structure to follow to get to that point, I don't know if I would have gotten there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think it just educates people on food so much too. And even coming from that version of you who like underate and was scared of food and everything like that. That's why I think macros is so cool, because it's like, not that we're like quality matters of what you're eating, but it's like when you're
Mm-hmm.
coming from that mindset of like clean, 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 and you kind of are like, oh, if I want to have a cookie and I can fit it in, and that doesn't mean I like messed up and I should say fuck it, and I'm just going to binge and eat all these cookies because I'm never going to eat a cookie again. And so I think
Yes.
depending on what like stage of healing and your journey and everything, it can be really cool to just kind of start to normalize food as, well, I don't really know what I was going to say. It's just like normalized food. It can be like the same, and you can have a treat and it's not going to kill
Ruin
you pretty
everything.
much.
It's not
Yeah.
that like all or nothing. And it's like, oh, wow, like I can leave X amount of calories for the end of the day so I can have that cookie, and it's not going to be the end of the world. And then, yeah. And then you just kind of like, that's when I started transitioning into the bodybuilding, which is a whole other disordered habit I got myself into, but I feel like it was better than the first one, to be honest. But I don't know. Yeah, to answer your question, if I did, I went on like 8 different tangents after that. But like, definitely had a chaotic childhood. Like, definitely control has been a thing for me. It's something I am continuing to work on. Literally last night, Matt and I were laying in bed, and I'm like, I'm not that controlling still, am I? And he's like, you definitely like things a certain way, and that's okay, because I get it. That's how you grew up. But he said the same thing. And that's who kind of like opened my mind to that. He's like, you have very high standards for people. And that's something I need to work on, because that's something that is an issue, but it comes up in health too. I want everyone around me like, Matt, you need to like eat a certain way, because like, and it comes from this place of like love, but it also comes from a place of like, I know if you do this, like I'm going to be able to control the outcome of your health and like how you feel. And I feel the same way with my parents. I get very upset with them if they're not eating a certain way and like taking care of themselves, because it's like, and this is funny that it doesn't show up like how I am as a coach, but it's like, I can do that. Like, why can't you do that? And like, I promise you, if you do that, you're going to feel so much better. Like, why don't you just do that? Like, it's so hard for me with people I love, but
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's good to have high standards for people and just in your life, because that's who you'll end up surrounding yourself with. But yeah, it's harder with people that, Matt, or like people that you're having, they always feel like they're falling short to like this idea that you have of them in your head.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. So,
yeah.
yeah, definitely a little bit of a control freak type A, recovering control freak type A.
When did acne become
Yeah,
part of
so
your story?
acne, I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like so much of it is like the food and the bodybuilding, but acne has been a part of my story like as long as I can remember. Probably correlates with like me restricting, and when you're young, you get written off that like, oh, it's just hormonal. It's nothing to worry about. And so probably I feel like from the time I'm like 13, 14, had acne, and it was always in different like varying degrees. I didn't have like that cystic hormonal acne until later on in my life. It was always just like I had pimples, I had acne. It always starts on your forehead when you're young, and then like transitions to like your cheeks and chin and that kind of stuff. And same thing, like I just hated it. Like I hated that I was the one that like had acne and skin issues, and none of your other friends do. And that probably contributed to a lot of like self-confidence issues as well. But seriously, as long as I can remember. And then I went on birth control at the ripe age of whatever it is, like 15, 16. And that helped maybe like control it. But once again, and I was talking about this on the skin issue we recorded, I never had like clear skin. I never had skin that I like, it just like looked good and like normal. There's always like redness, bumps, acne, whatever, just like dullness that was always there. And I was always trying the new skin products, the topicals that the doctor would prescribe me. I begged my doctor to put me on Accutane and he didn't. So that I appreciate. But that was just like always a thing. And then as long as I can honestly remember, and I always just remember feeling like I'm going to be freaking 40 years old and have acne. Like I've done everything. There's nothing else that I can do. And then I got my IUD out. Now that would be 5 years ago, I think, which is crazy. And my acne got really bad because I just took it out. I was so stressed out. It was after Lacey and I got back from Mexico. I had like quit my bodybuilding prep, came home, took out my IUD. My skin just absolutely erupted, like was the worst it's ever been in my life. And I was like, holy shit. But I honestly think it was meant to happen because Lacey had kind of been going down this like more holistic route at the time. And I had just like gone through a breakup. I always finally like realized bodybuilding is insane and like so hard on my body. And I was like, I just need a full factory reset. And that's exactly what I got. And then, as much as it was like so hard going through it because you're like, what the hell? And I knew I didn't want to go to the doctor. I knew I just needed to like fix this. And because Lacey was going through that journey with like her psoriasis and inflammation, I had someone to reference that like this is something that you could actually potentially work through. And then I got that PCOS diagnosis also when I got my IUD removed, which I think was a huge proponent because I didn't want to go back on birth control. And the doctor said there was nothing that I could do. And so then I obviously took matters into my own hands and did all of the things that you see when it comes to helping with your PCOS, which are eating to balance your blood sugar and like low impact movement and really focusing on stress management and really focusing on my sleep and just overall like holistic practices. I started not getting the most toxic form of soap and shampoo and all of those things. And that's like seeing my acne just slowly cleared up. And it didn't happen like overnight. It was slow and gradual. And then I have photos where I remember like I like started to feel like my skin was looking good, but you can still see I like have breakouts, but I was like so happy about it because it wasn't just like this deep cystic acne. And then all of a sudden, just I kept adding the habits, the castor oil packs, the HTMA, the blah, blah, blah. And over time, now it's like I can't, if I have a pimple pop up, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Or I deal with other things like rosacea and stuff. My skin is just like, I'm one of those people. That's how my body tells me something's off. But yeah, it was like a lifelong thing
Yeah,
for me, which is crazy.
I know. It's so interesting to like think back of like, it's like was it the chicken or the egg? Like, and what
I
was the
know.
spiral, but it was probably your height.
Literally my height and my control issues. And I think too, like, I'm like, I wonder how long I had like PCOS, like if I were to actually get a diagnosis, because I was on birth control, I didn't take it regularly, but I remember I would like come off of it for like 6 months here and there. And when I'd come off of it, I'd like say to my doctor, I'm like, I'm not getting a period. Isn't that kind of weird? Like, and of course they're like, no, it's fine. It's really normal. It's like, you're just young. I was like, okay. And I just remember from such a young age feeling like I was gonna have a hard time getting pregnant, which is just like so, I think it's more common than I realized. But like for me, that's like, why was I 16 years old being like, I know I'm gonna have a hard time getting pregnant? Like, why
Yeah.
was my head going there? And
That's what I was
so
gonna ask. Why did you go on birth control? Was it for like not having a baby or was it because of your skin?
I think it was my skin at the time for sure. I feel like probably, I can't really remember. I think for sure it was my skin. I'm like, okay, well, if I can go on it for my skin, I actually remember thinking this. If I can go on it for my skin, then when I start having sex, I won't have to ask my mom to go on it because I'm having sex. So I think that was actually the reason. But yeah, I was probably 16 at the time. And like doctors just were at that time, and maybe still are, like handing it out like candy, like which one you want. You can have them all, go for it. And I'm like so bad at taking the pill. Like I remember girls would have like alarms and like they'd like take it at the exact same time every day. And I just never would do that, which is probably causing its own issues. So
I know. It's so funny how I always think about that too, because just when I graduated high school and like moved out of my hometown and lived with a boyfriend, and I just like stopped taking the pill because I have ADHD and I never wanted to make an appointment. And I'm just like thinking of, I'm like, thank fucking God.
I
Like, it's like,
know.
I always think back about how my personality has like low key probably really helped me on my healing journey because I've just always
Yeah, like
been vulnerable. But it's like,
like
yeah.
not booking appointments and not just like wanting to do those things, but it's helped you, yeah. And like then I got the IUD in because I'm like, well, I'm not consistent with this. And I don't want to get pregnant and I know nothing about my cycle. And the only way to not get pregnant is to be on birth control because that's what I've been told. And so I got the IUD in. And then I remember being so nervous to ask my doctor to take it out because they need to shame people for coming off birth control, I guess, all of them. And so I said, because I would get cramps, like, and I'd like get basically just like fake bleeds. For everyone that doesn't realize, you're not actually getting your period if you're on birth control. So that's not like a true marker of health. So I would get these like periods, but I would get really bad cramps. And so I was like, okay, perfect. This is what I can tell my doctor why I want to take it out. And then that's why she did the ultrasound for the PCOS. And then that's how I got the
Oh.
diagnosis. But I just find that diagnosis to be so interesting because even to this day, I'm like, I technically do have the diagnostic criteria because you need the cysts on your ovaries. I wonder if this will change now with like the new name change because there's nothing to do with insulin in the diagnostic criteria. But right now, I think it's like the Notre Dame criteria is cysts on your ovaries, high androgens, and then the third one is an irregular cycle. So I had cysts on my ovaries with that they detect through an ultrasound, and then and I still do have an irregular cycle, but to me, I'm just like, that doesn't, like, I don't have the high androgens technically. If you do my blood work, I don't technically have the high insulin or the blood sugar dysregulation. I do have a little bit of it for sure, but I just still feel like that's not like, I don't know. I align with that diagnosis because it's what I am and it's what I've been able to use to be able to see so many changes in my health. But I think that's just partially me now is like I don't want to like sit in that and be like, well, I just have PCOS because that doesn't help anyone if they just discount everything that they're experiencing to having PCOS. And that's where I probably differ than some people,
Yeah,
whether
well,
it's
just
good or bad.
understanding that there's a reason that you have it, you know what I mean? And so you can
Yeah.
do something about it. But it is interesting to think about that because it's like with it being called PCOS, now PMOS, I wonder if they'll get rid of the cysts on the ovaries as like a marker. And then to like go into that, it's like, why did that even become
Part of it.
Y you know what I mean? Like, it's so because there's so many people that have PCOS because they have high androgens and irregular cycles, but don't have the cysts on their ovaries, and so it's just
Yeah.
so not that we need to go into that, but I'm just like, is it some way connected from, like, the insulin resistance or whatever that creates the cysts on ovaries? Or was it just, like, they did one study and it was like, "Oh, 60% of the women that had X and Y also had cysts on their ovaries," so then they were like, "Oh, we'll blame it on that." You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. The one book I read, it's like literally called PCOS. It was a good one, but she basically like connected everything about PCOS back to your metabolic health. And so when we have that like blood sugar dysregulation, that high insulin, that's going to cause higher androgens. It's also going to cause the cysts on your ovaries. it also depletes, I cannot think of the other hormone right now, I'm blanking. But another thing that causes like basically higher androgens and like presenting as higher androgens. And so it all comes back to even the cyst on your ovaries, to that like metabolic
Right.
health.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like people just still, it's like, oh, I have high androgens, I need to take spearmint tea. You don't have high androgens because you don't drink enough spearmint tea. Like you have high androgens because of something else going on. And so it's just
Which is
such a
great. Like,
discount.
yeah, drink the spearmint tea, but also that's not going to solve anything. Like you have to
Yeah,
go
do the
to
things.
the root. And then, okay, so you got diagnosed with PCOS, PMOS, and your acne was still an issue. And now it's really been like your cycle, I would say, has been your final straw, which you've made really good
strides
progress
with.
in the last
Yeah,
little bit.
I've come down to the, so a couple months ago, as you guys know, I did the parasite cleanse. After that, I had like maybe like a 38-day cycle, which is like one of the shortest ones I've had since I got my ID removed. And then the one after that, I also had like, I think it was like a 34-day cycle, which was by far the shortest cycle I've had. Things I did was the parasite cleanse. I also cut out gluten again. And then last year when I cut out gluten, I also had like a shorter cycle for like 2 months in a row. And so I think that it's like an inflammation thing. It's hard to know if it's like more the gluten or the parasite cleanse. So I need to do another one, but it's funny because this cycle, I know it's going to be a longer one. I can just tell it's like, it's not coming. But obviously I was like away and like drinking more. So I just think it's so tied to inflammation. And it's not necessarily that like I am celiac or even have an allergy to gluten. I just think that gluten is such, unfortunately, this like inflammatory thing in so many of our diets. And because I've cut that out, I'm cutting out that one inflammatory thing, but also Lacey and I talk about this all the time. Like if you're eating gluten free, you just like generally end up eating healthier. Like I get like a lettuce wrap bun if I go to fast food, if we're on a long car ride, rather than getting like a full blown burger, which isn't the end of the world, but those things do compound. And I think I'm just like maybe a little bit more susceptible to the inflammation. So definitely, hopefully making strides, but that's been like a long, long journey, like some cycles, 100 days long. And for those of you that are listening, people are like, you have a 100-day period? No, your cycle is like from day one of your period till when you get the next period. I'm not talking about like my period being this long. I actually have a very normal, healthy period. I have like the symptoms of ovulation. My ovulation is just like pushed back. And so once again, it's like, I think so easy to be so hard on yourself with this, but Lacey talked about with like this fertility journey that she's on, you kind of have to just approach these symptoms that your body's giving you with like gratitude, because it's like this could be not showing up in any way, and that could show up as like a like cancer in 30 years down the road. But because my body's giving me this symptom, I'm able to like make changes to my lifestyle and figure it out now rather than not. And I'm so grateful that like I got my ID out when I did, because if I were to have that in now and decide to get it out right before I start trying, I don't know what the hell I would do.
Because
So,
it's almost been like 5 years of, also this is like Jensen, the holistic functional coach, speaking. So it's like 5 years of knowing what to do and intentionally working on that has pretty much brought your cycle from more of a consistent 100 days to now, okay, we're seeing those 30 numbers come in, and that's like a 5 year, and she's still not there, right? It doesn't mean like you can't get pregnant or you won't, but even just for me with like constantly tracking like every day my cycle now, it's crazy how much, if I'm like a little bit stressed in those first like week and a half of my follicular phase, how much that will just like move my ovulation. Like
it's wild.
yeah, it is wild. So,
And it's just cool because then now you like learn that about your body, right? It's like so frustrating, obviously. I would love to be one of those people that like come off the pill and they start getting a normal 28-day cycle like that. But I'm not. And Lacey said, it's like, it's crazy now though, because we've been so aware of our cycle. It's like, I know when I'm ovulating, like clockwork. It's like, okay, boobs get sore, a little bit of ovulation pain, temperature is going to spike in 2 days, temperature spikes. It's like, you know, your body so well. And like this month I knew I was on 2 vacations. I wasn't drinking like crazy, but like I'd have like a diet gin and tonic once a night while I was in Palm Springs. And like, I wasn't eating any gluten, but obviously alcohol is going to cause inflammation. Now it's like frustrating that I can't do that without having my cycle go back to where it is, but it's just a sign like you have to pay attention. I think that's something with me too, is I'm not, because I've been all or nothing in my life, in my functional health journey, I have not been all or nothing. I really think I have like a balanced approach to my health. It's something I'm very like proud of. Do sometimes I wish I could be a little bit more like intense with these habits, and maybe I would have moved the needle a little bit quicker, probably, but I just know that's not what I need and it's not sustainable, and I need to try to get there with something that is sustainable, or else everything will just come back to where it has been. But I think that is something that like, it's just, yeah, with this health journey, I'm not someone that's like, I'm not going to freak out if I'm like not wearing my blue light blockers. I'm not going to like freak out if I have like a standalone carb. Am I going to try to make those habits like 90% of the time when I'm at home, when I'm in my routine? Absolutely. But you just have to kind of know yourself. And me, it's just like, I can't, that journey being that all or nothing, even in like a functional health space, is not healthy, right? And I think bodybuilders know that, because it's like those people you see online that are like absolutely perfect with all things functional health, will not touch a seed oil, would never even like, not even think about wearing their blue light blockers, or never even look at tap water, like all those things. Like that's not healthy too. You need to have balance. And when you go through something like bodybuilding, you really appreciate balance.
Well, and I think it's too just like knowing yourself, right? It's like pretty much all of these issues stemmed from your control issues.
Yeah,
So it's like, okay, trying to
so true.
control every single aspect of my functional health journey is not going to serve me. And that's just like, you know yourself on that level, where
Yeah.
other people have had no fucking control ever. And it's like, you need to lock in if you
Yes.
ever want to heal.
Focus.
But I resonate with that a lot too, and I feel like that now where I'm at too. It's like I have so much resistance towards like being perfect, because we
Perfect.
were that for so long, and we like took us so long to get away from it, that I'm like scared now. And I even feel with my own fertility journey, we're at the next part where it's like we kind of got to take it up a level.
Yeah.
And so I'm like feeling so much resistance to that, because I'm like, oh,
It
what does
gives me
that even
goosebumps.
mean?
I know, because it's
Yeah.
like, how much more can you do without it like being
Well, and I'm like,
unhealthy?
am I really going to tell Zach that the once every 3 months that he wants to have a beer on the boat, that like he can't because we have like,
Yeah.
it's just like, so I just like don't want to at all. So it's just like funny, but you just have to know yourself. Right. And I think that's kind of what sets us apart. I always say this in the functional space, is because we came from lifestyle fat loss coaches, and now we've like intertwined that with functional. We understand that what is optimal isn't always sustainable, and the only thing that's
No.
actually optimal is what is sustainable. So you have to kind of look at it that way too. But I think it's just truly knowing yourself. And but
Yeah. And it's so easy to compare yourself to people online, where it's like, oh, they're doing all the things. I'm not doing any of that. So there's no point in doing it at all. But there is, and that's not always the case. And yeah, I think it's funny. I always say, like with Matt too, I'm like, okay, like there will come a time if we're trying to have babies where I actually might need to like say no to the processed foods, and say no if anyone even offers me a small glass of wine, or that I actually do want at that moment. And when that time comes, because like Lacey said, there's like certain situations where you do need to like lock in, then I will get there. But for me right now, it's like these small changes are working. But it's so funny, like even with cutting out gluten, it took me, like so long to just like, I just felt so like, I'm like felt so icky about cutting something out, because once again, with like where we've come from, and like us telling ourselves we can't have so many things for so long. And then I cut it out and I'm like, okay, this isn't like I'm not being toxic and weird about it. Like I'm just not having gluten anymore. And so it's just so funny, like the games your mind plays when you've like, you still want to focus on your health, but you don't want to be that person anymore. And like thinking about the fact I would like go to freaking family dinners with like meal prep makes me want to blow my brains out. Like it's just so icky. And like thinking about if I was that person that was like asking about seed oils at a restaurant, like that gives me the ick. Like it's just the same person, but in a different version, which not everyone would agree. And I do think when it comes to like healthy food, you got to prioritize it, but it's just so funny.
I think it's too just having a sense of confidence in yourself, because I always see this with people. If you are doing what you're supposed to do when you're in control, you don't stress out about those meals where you're
No.
having once a restaurant meal once a month. Like you don't worry about it because you know you do that, the foundational stuff every single day at home when you're in control. So it's like now it's funny watching other people like observe me in these situations
Yes.
where they're like, you're having that, and it was like Kira was kind of saying on the last episode, but and I'm like, I'm not even like,
Worried.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Like
actually
I'm
really
just
enjoying this. Are you okay?
like,
Well, and then I think
so it's
sometimes they like gives them satisfaction because they're like, oh, like she's not as XYZ as
mhm.
she says she is. But it's like, no, I'm like that when I'm home in my routine. I have my red lights on. I'm like doing my infusions. But when I'm like away, and probably it's the ADHD, it's like, no, I'm not remembering to do an infusion at night. And I'm not remembering to do all of these things. I will when I can and when I'm in control. But it's just like I'm fine because it's that 80/20 rule. It just applies to everything. If you are on
Mhm.
track when you're at home 80% of the time. Now, if you're someone that like travels for work and now all of a sudden you're away out of your routine all the time, that's another situation where you have to be more diligent with things, but it's an interesting balance.
It is. Yeah. I think it's good. But I do think a lot of it comes from how much control we had over that like part of our life for so long that now we're like resistant to it. And we're like, I'm
I'm
just
like,
gonna
ew, that's
look.
kind of scary.
Yeah.
But then it's like I also like part of me, like even with Kira, obviously, like the fertility, you just have to like lock in. And when she was like in that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like such a piece of shit. Like I'm not doing any of the things. But when you're in that situation, like it changes how you approach
Hmm.
your health.
Yeah, it does. So
So
what
yeah,
else?
that's kind of the bulk of it. I feel like the main other thing was the bodybuilding. And yeah, Lacey coached me through my first bodybuilding, my 2 shows that I did. And I was so lean. And my body responded so well to that, which is so funny considering like the other issues that I have.
I know.
Like that's another confusing. This sounds like I've never had a hard time losing weight in my life when I like do it the right way. So I did the bodybuilding and then after that COVID happened, which was like a blessing because then I just was focusing on like building muscle and all of those things, which is such a cool thing to work on. And I suggest all women try it because it's actually such a fun thing seeing your body change in a way that you're not focusing on like losing weight, but like building, like making your shoulders look more round or like building your glutes. And so that was like a big part. And then, like I said, at the end of my previous relationship, I like went into a prep that I wasn't ready for. It's one of those situations your coaches tells you like, okay, day 1 of prep starts tomorrow and you don't have a backbone to say no. And then went through a breakup and then went to Mexico with Lacey and the whole entire trip. I'm like, I don't know if I like want to be doing this. Like, I just don't like, it just feels so out of alignment with what I want right now. And Lacey was like, I'm not going to tell you not to, you need to make this decision on your own, which is honestly, if you're ever with someone and they're having something like that, is such a good way to like be there for them and listen to them without guiding their decision and letting them come to that on their own terms. And then yeah, I quit while I was in Mexico and came home, didn't track a macro for probably 3 years, threw out my scale, took out my IUD, like literally 360 in my life because that's how I do things. And I would never go back there. But now it's funny, like we talk about. It's like now I'm like really liking like getting into the gym and lifting heavy again. And I can like track my food for a couple days in a row just to kind of like see where I'm at. And it's not this like visceral response to it. So it's been a journey.
I know, I have goosebumps. It has been a journey. But it's also, you just create so much trust with yourself too, even just like the person that you are and the women that you've coached now too. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing, and you have enough proof where it's like you can track your food for 4 days and you're not going to fucking lose it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has been a journey. And that's why it's like everyone that's in the functional space, we didn't just like choose because we were like, there's got to be
cool.
more yeah, this looks cool. It's like, no, we were in the freaking weeds or the gutters of life for years, and then we all wound up here. And it's even funny, just through me, Jensen and Kira, how we all kind of were on journeys for very different reasons, but all kind of found functional health very closely together and like needed it together. And so it's just like funny how now we're here.
Yeah. Even like the eczema, like that was like another thing. Like I got the eczema when I went through, and I'm like, why am I getting eczema? And like, why am I having these crazy breakouts when like nothing other than stress in my life has been a thing? And so it's just, I think when you finally start, like, I had a call with a girl, I'll end it here, yesterday, and she was like, I didn't even know bleeding through a Super Plus tampon with a pad every 2 hours wasn't normal until I listened to this podcast and this doctor was telling me, like, that's not normal. And then I just started realizing all of these symptoms I was having, the pelvic pain, like, wasn't normal. And I think that's what we need sometimes, is just someone to be like, oh, like, I used to also get strep throat. I remember what Lacey was like when she was working with her functional practitioner. She's like, there's like a gut bacteria that causes like strep throat. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I'm not just someone that like gets strep throat all the time. I'm not just someone that like gets eczema. I'm not just someone that like has acne. There's something going on that's making me have these things. And so, like Lacey said, it's just like no one's in this space. And like, because they're just like, there must be a different approach to medicine. Like, let's see what we can find, and like get shamed by everyone in our life for being crunchy and weird. It's like, no, we are forced into this position. So,
yeah. And what worked no longer worked. And so,
exactly. But that's kind of my journey.
Yeah. And I love your journey. It's crazy. And I feel like every time you tell it too, and you said this at the beginning, where it's like people have probably heard your journey so many times, which they might have at this point, but every time you tell it, we like get something different out of it. And I think too, just where you're at in your life too, depending on when you listen to it, you might get something, or it might connect the dots or something. And so that's why we like to just continue to share. And it also helps us to like look back and be like, oh yeah, this is kind of fucking weird that I did that.
I was a freak. Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of a freak, and that's why I'm here. But it's just like those little stories, even when you're young, right? Like I know so many women connect, or I can't think of the word, but relate to that like control and growing up with someone who your sibling or whatever maybe needed more attention, therefore got it. And so it's like those are the little things to me that are just like so cool, where it's like that personality trait therefore manifested into all of these things.
Yeah.
And I just think everyone just thinks they're the chosen one that got this shitty symptom. But it's like, no, that's been stemming since you were probably like 4 years old or born.
Even
and you
before,
didn't even know it. So
exactly.
So yeah, well, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Share it with a friend, especially if that friend struggles with PMOS or acne or eczema or irregular
disordered
periods
eating or
disorder.
God.
Just to name a few.
And you put it like that.
I know, it's funny. But we all have our laundry list. It's fine.
So funny.
But yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. And rate, subscribe. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions for Jeb, hit her up. She loves it.
Love it. Bye.
Love it. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to The Wellness Effect. We're so grateful to be part of your wellness journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on Instagram. We'll put all of our handles in the show notes. If you have questions or ideas, slide into our DMs or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep creating your own wellness effect.